Tim Brando, Fox Sports, has college basketball this weekend. He's on the road. He's by phone today with Craig Smoke and Paul Catalina, and I'm also David Smoke. Where are you at, Tim? I know you said you're going to be up in the Northeast or Midwest.
Yeah, I'm in lovely New Jersey. I've got the battle for supremacy in the tri-state area in the Big East. St. John's, who ought to be ranked, it's a crime that they aren't. I can't believe it. 15-3, Rick Pitino can't get in the top 25. They're really, really good. And they're taking on Seton Hall, who's struggling. And one of the reasons they're struggling after winning the NIT last year is their best player, Kadari Richmond, left for, guess where? St. John's on NIL. A little more cash available in Manhattan than in New Jersey. So that's where he is. And let's just say tomorrow night will be wild, and he will be the focal point of much of the animosity that the fans in Jersey have for the Red Storm. It'll be an unbelievable environment. It'll be great. I've done my fair share of St. John's Seton Hall games through the years, and it'll be old school Big East. So I realized we did get bumped over to FS1 away from Fox. This would have been a double dip of Friday Night Hoops with Creighton and UConn on after us on Fox. But the NFL, in their divine wisdom, decided to give the Saturday evening window to Fox. And that's what the Lions game will be on Big Fox. So, but if you're so inclined and you're not an NFL guy and you're into college hoops, and God knows I am, we'll have more than our fair share of viewers for this matchup tomorrow night. Looking forward to it.
I want to get into college football. We will do that. But I know St. John's had that just gut-wrenching loss to Baylor down in the islands. And I know Baylor wishes they were ranked because they need to have a win against a ranked team. So maybe they'll jump
They're the first team out of the top 25. I think they had something like 83 votes, something like that. But it's just Ed Cooley went off on it this past week. He's got a good team, by the way, at Georgetown. And I think they're a tournament team. I don't think there's any doubt Georgetown's going to make the tournament this year. Really good young players on that team. Got a freshman that's unbelievable. Might be in the NBA next year. Sorber, big kid, great player. And he was like, "This is a crime. I mean, how can St. John's be 15-3? This is the first time that they've been this good, 6-1 in the Big East since Louis' last championship team." Okay, I mean, we're going back to like 91, 92 since they've been this good this early, and they can't get a sniff. I don't know if it's an anti-Patino thing with a lot of the writers. It might be, very easily could be, but they're a really good team. I had them earlier in the year, back in December before Christmas against Providence, and they won at the buzzer. Zuby Ejiofor is an outstanding player. Richmond's going to play in the NBA. R.J. Lewis is a tremendous talent. And by the way, the Baylor game is the one that Rick really felt they let get away. There was a controversial call, as I recall, at the end of that game. But I mean, because they lost it, it really does help Baylor, obviously, with the committee in a great league like the Big 12. But St. John's is absolutely legitimate. The college basketball this year, what's funny, David, is I have if you're a Big 12 fan and you really want to piss off an SEC fan, just tell them, hey, don't worry about it. You're the most dominant you're by far and away the most dominant conference in college basketball this year. Boy, that'll piss them off.
I know, Paul.
Hey, look, Tim, I've been at a great number of ACC, SEC games in my life where the taunt has been from the ACC school basketball school towards the SEC school that they're beating, which to me is a compliment. But you know, in certain parts of the South, man, that's not the thing. You are correct. So, Tim, you've been around the game for a long time, and you knew Bino Cook, and the reason I ask you this is, I'm curious to know what Bino Cook would have thought about Notre Dame being America's sweetheart team this week in the national championship, because that is never what they have. They were never that until a week ago.
Yeah. And by the way, all of us that know Bino or spend a lot of time with him, and God knows he was very influential in my life and my career. It's like a mortal sin since he passed away. It's a mortal sin to pick against Notre Dame when they're an underdog. It's just flat out a mortal sin. Brando, you can't go against the Blessed Mother. You know? Blessed Mother's never an underdog. Everyone hates Notre Dame. But the truth is, that Notre Dame does it the right way. They've always, and I know they're getting paid now. The reason they're getting paid is because quacks like you wanted a playoff. They wanted to open it up for everybody. You couldn't stand having two national champions. What was wrong with having a UPI and an AP national? I never had a problem with it. You did. And what's happening? Well, everybody's lining their pockets. But if they're going to play and they're going to get paid, you got to pick Notre Dame, particularly if they're an underdog. You're going to go straight to hell if you don't pick them.
Oh my God!
And trust me, one of the reasons I think what did the line open at like 10, and it's down to 8.5. Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And part of the reason I think is the ghost of Dino. It's like, how dare you pick against the Irish and say that they have putrid material? They've always got material at Notre Dame. That was his great line, and there were many of them, obviously, through the years. Best home field since the Kremlin. Indiana had no chance in that opening round game. So let me just say this to you. Regardless of my affinity for Beans and the history and of Notre Dame and all that, it's a little bit like the Yankees when Joe Torre took over. You know, I grew up a big fan of Joe Torre. Loved him when he played for the Cardinals, even though I wasn't a Cardinals fan. I loved the guy. I loved the way he played the game. And then as a manager, he took over a downtrodden Braves team that was the worst team in the league, and Ted Turner still owned the team at that time, got him off to a great start. They made the playoffs, for Christ's sakes. He made Atlanta, which was arguably the worst franchise in the National League, great. And then he goes to the Yankees, and he ends what could have been the team of the 90s greatest run when Jim Leyritz took Craig Waller's deep in Game 3, and they never looked back after being down 2-0. Otherwise, I'd have a second ring, fellas. So, but the reality is this is a really likable, at every turn, this is a really likable Notre Dame team. I mean, it is. The players are even the ones that are highly thought of, okay, that are picked to go very high in the draft, are likable guys. And then when you look at Riley, the job that kid has done at the quarterback position to just make plays with his legs, whatever. And I remember I picked Notre Dame to make the playoff earlier in the year. A lot of people didn't like that pick. They were on my case. And I said, they'll go into Notre Dame and win because this kid knows how to play the position and make enough plays to win. Now, they had the hiccup against Northern Illinois. There is no worse loss to have at home than one against Northern Illinois out of the mighty MAC. And then to resurrect themselves the way they have, they've absolutely been the story of these playoffs. And no coach has gotten more out of the 12-team playoff in terms of building his own credibility than Marvin Freeman. You know, I mean, Marcus Freeman has done an incredible job of building his own resume to the point where now, you know, he's having to tell his agent to not take calls from the former Big Ten commissioner in Chicago. this week. So that should tell you a lot, should.
Tim, Ohio State went through Tennessee, Oregon, Texas to get to this point. Notre Dame beat Indiana, Georgia, Penn State to get here. Did we end up with the two best teams? I mean, all the talk about the seedings and everything, did we ultimately end up with what the goal should be with the two best teams in the country playing for the national championship?
Yeah, I think so. And what's great about it is they're both playing really, really well now. And they've played games recently. Go back and look at, the BCS and prior to that, even the Alliance when, the Big Ten wasn't a part of it. And go back and see how unseemly those championship games were and the number of false starts and just, disjointed games that were played. A lot of time. Now, we had a couple of great semifinal games when we went to 14. The Georgia Oklahoma game comes to mind in the Rose Bowl when Mayfield was playing. But seldom did we have games played at a very, very high level. That short of the Texas USC game in 2005, which I think is the greatest championship game in the modern era ever played, when the Longhorns pulled it off against a team that was going after destiny, really, to say they'd won 3 in a row, counting an AP championship. Other than that game, the games have been not cosmetically fun to watch. These games, and especially now, that's why I give Notre Dame a great chance of making this game a lot closer than the experts think. Now, that isn't to say that Ohio State won't cover. They might get a backdoor cover. Who knows? But I think it's going to be a highly competitive game. And it's because they've been playing and they've got mojo working, and what is the separation in days now? 9-10 days since they played. I remember I was in DC last week.
It was Thursday night. Thursday night against
Thursday night. Yeah. Right. I was in DC getting ready to do my game at Maryland with UCLA, and then I caught the scoop and score. I got back to DC after the game at College Park. So, yeah, when you've got 10 days between games as opposed to 31, 33, or 34, which is what we had in the godforsaken BCS, and it was almost that, maybe 28, 26 days when we had the college football playoff. And, I think these teams are playing at a very high level. It's been swept under the rug a little bit because guess what? We still have to get through an NFL weekend. And we've got, the divisional playoffs. And we've got, so much going on that's not college football related. There's still some things that have to be done with the dates. I'll go back again and repeat ad nauseum, I'm sure, to a lot of people that we need to have more than one network entity involved so these games can be promoted on a more balanced basis across the board around this country. I know this might be shocking for some to think, but not everybody just watches ESPN. Some people might be watching other networks. The NFL gets that, and their games are everywhere. And that's why they're the sacred cow of all of sports. But college football trying to dodge NFL times and dates put themselves in a position that they're going to be playing on a Monday night. And Monday night is not always the best night for a college game. It just isn't. And Thursday and Friday wasn't the best night. Why did they do that? Well, because there were wild card games being played on Saturday and Sunday. The Thursday game, which was so much fun to watch, did not get a great rating. And the reason it didn't wasn't because of the schools, wasn't because of the game. It was because it was on Thursday night. So the proprietors of college football need to be thinking about the big picture, and they just took the money and ran. They just took they asked for an exorbitant amount of money. No one was willing to pay it except ESPN, but they never even put it up for bids for any other network to get involved. And so stuck with inventory was ESPN that they wound up having to sublease 2 of the first round games to TNT. That didn't work out well. Those games were poorly rated. A lot of people didn't see them, didn't know where they were. And it didn't cross promote the sport any whatsoever. Okay, TNT took it because they just needed some inventory at all. I mean, they're losing the NBA. They're trying to redirect and reconstruct their entire sports division. So, they were a likely suitor to take it, even though they were just taking ESPN's broadcast and ESPN's people. So I hope they take a long look in the off season at not just the dates, but also the calendar in and of itself. Start the season earlier. Week 0 was August 24th. I did a game that day. We should have week 0 August, a week before that. Have week 1 that early. And let's get rid of spring practice and have a fall practice, fall camp begin in the latter stages of the spring going into the summer. And there's just so much that they can do to make this thing better with the calendar. But the level of play and the actual production of talent and the way the games have been played, I think, has been outstanding. More was made of the first-round blowouts than needed to be, but that was whose fault? The rights holders' fault. That was ESPN's fault. They did it to themselves. But since that time, the games have been tremendous. But, again, the calendar being the way it is, I don't know that everybody recognizes how great it's been. Those of us that love college football know how historic it is and how great it's been. But, again, if you're trying to get the sport to become mass appeal and you want to compete with the NFL, you got to get smarter with the way you put things together. And that includes the calendar. It includes making sure that you get massive public relations work done. And I'm sorry, just one network entity will not do it.
Tim, I'm going to make my pitch for the calendar for you. No spring football, OTAs like the NFL, which would allow them to figure out who the roster is before they practice with it, which I think most coaches would love. Then week 0 becomes week 1. Week 1 is Labor Day weekend. That is college football's gigantic real rollout because the NFL's not playing on Labor Day weekend. So roll that out. Then you're ahead of the game by a week. You can start the postseason a little bit earlier. The only fly in the ointment is the Army-Navy game on that weekend where, that's where they've got to close the gap. You still want that to be, highlighted. But if the other games start after it, I don't know what the huge problem with that would be, but that's my only fly in the ointment.
Yeah, I saw what my old friend Paul Finebaum had to say about it, and he may be echoing the thoughts of the suits that he deals with and he's in contact with. I do believe Notre Dame and Navy deserves to be standalone, and by standalone, that means, in my view anyway, the only game on at that time. I don't think it needs to be the only game played that day. I think we can play games after it. I absolutely agree with that. So this is one of those moments when Paul, who I've known for a long time and I've often disagreed with, I actually agree with him. They need to make sure that they use all those dates that are available to them. Part of this also is making sure that they've got the stadiums and all the things that are set up for the games that aren't going to be played at home fields. They need to make sure that they've got all that set up well in advance. And, from time to time, you've got to be prepared for situations that you cannot control. I did think they took I thought they did a great job in dealing with the situation in New Orleans before Georgia played Notre Dame. It was a tragedy. It was something that was awful. But I think the people in power, along with the city of New Orleans and the people at the All-State Sugar Bowl, did the right thing. The presentation of it, which has been roundly excoriated. I saw that Burke Magnus, who by the way is a good guy. I've known Burke for a while. The ESPN said they did make a mistake not airing the national anthem. I totally agree with that. But I thought on the whole they did a good job. You just have to be fluid. You got to be ready to make changes when something happens that's crazy. similar to what's going on out in California. The NFL didn't waste any time. They got that game to Glendale. You got to be able to make adjustments on the fly. But the calendar situation is something they got to deal with based on the expansion of the playoff. And I think also, fellas, just mark it down. They don't have enough money being made from this. They don't. Even with all the rights fees that ESPN, it was an exorbitant amount of money. One of the reasons why you're not hearing anybody complaining at the other networks is the money was off the charts, and ESPN was willing to spend it. But they also, to try to make some of that money back, did what? They subleased the games to Turner. So they didn't have enough room, even on their myriad of. Well, let's get it on streaming now. Okay. Streaming has got a great future, and it's got a pretty good present. But we don't need these games streaming right now. We just don't. America's not ready for that just yet. It's not. In time, maybe, but not at this point.
Tim, there was a rumor right after the coaching carousel got started, and it's a rumor that's quickly gained some legs. How much are you entertaining the idea, or what are your thoughts on the idea of Dallas Cowboys head coach Dion Sanders?
I don't think it'll happen, and I don't think it'll happen because, and again, I may be wrong. I don't have any inside information, but you and I, Paul, we've talked. David, we've talked. I've known him a long time, and I'm a fan of his. I am. I always have been. Whether it was playing, coaching, I don't always agree with him, but I don't think there's any question that the Cowboys being interested in this opening being there serves one first and foremost major purpose for both he and 82-year-old Jerry Jones, and that is promotion. They can dominate the news cycle for a week, 10 days, or whatever they want by having this out there. Because God knows those people doing embrace debate shows don't have the ability to talk about anything else but that. Or maybe LeBron, or maybe Aaron Rodgers, or maybe about one another and what's going on at the different shows with their personalities who may be doing things that we really didn't need to know about, but they're telling us about off the air. So they want to talk about the Cowboys and Dion and Jerry Jones, so go right ahead. I think in the end, Dion looks at coaching as a calling. And for those that don't understand the difference between career aspirations and a calling, he really is a tremendous man of faith. And I think he knows that what he's doing for players of that age, at that stage of their development, is a really beautiful and good thing. And I think that's the reason he wanted to do this. Now, granted, people like Travis Hunter and others that he coached from the time they were in Pop Warner all the way through, those guys are graduating, move on to the next level. We saw how emotional he got before the Alamo Bowl when he knew it was going to be his last chance to coach his sons. I understand that. A lot of people are thinking that may be one of the reasons why he's going to go with it, because he wants to continue that story. The NFL is about business. The business of the NFL can be tawdry at times. No one knows that more than Dion Sanders. In the end, he'll never have a better situation than the one he has currently at Colorado. And he's got tremendous momentum that has now been, I think, seen through the portal and also through recruiting. And in the end, I just believe that this is another way for him to get more mileage out of everything else that he does, whether it's with Barstool or with his own brand that he's a part of on a regular basis. And he's going to wish his sons well, and obviously Travis well. And I think he's going to stay at Colorado. I just think he's better suited first off, he's better suited to coach it. That was his intent when he got into it. And the business of the NFL is enough for him. He has enough knowledge to know that you cannot control your destiny as a coach. in the NFL the way you can in college. And for that reason, I think he stays in Boulder.
Tim, let me ask you this, if you don't mind, if we could ask you a couple more questions. The games on Thursday and Friday were Blue Blood, Alpha, Logos, Brands, etc. And they were good games. But the numbers were still pretty good. I mean, like still very high, but they were not, I think, what they expected, but they had to expect.
No, they weren't what they wanted. They wanted more. They wanted a lot more.
And it's their fault because they opened up their front door and allowed them to come in and take the women and children in the NFL and start playing games years ago on Saturday, and they weren't forward thinking enough about it. Is that true?
Right. There's a lot of that. Yeah, absolutely. Completely gave up New Year's Day, and they did that just with the BCS. They didn't have to do it that way, but they did it that way. There have been a lot of mistakes made along the way because there's never been, a leader. We've never had someone in a position of power looking out for what's best for the product in general. We've always had, people that had their own constituents in mind and taking care of favors. And, the bowl issue has come up of late. It's very popular now to say, well, let's get rid of the bowl's involvement because you saw how great those home environments were. And by the way, I wouldn't have a problem at all if we did one more week of home fields. I wouldn't, especially if we go to 16. And I do think we're going to go to 16, guys, because the writing's on the wall with what's transpiring right now as it relates to revenue sharing in 2016. And even with all of that money that ESPN decided to spend, and by the way, they're never going to get financially out of it what they put into it. They're not. But even with all that money spent, the colleges still need more. They need more. And so you add NIL and you add portal, and now you add revenue share as part of that lawsuit. And by the way, fans don't even know this, David. Time and time again, somebody, well, the NCAA this, the NCAA, the colleges are paying what they're paying in revenue sharing because the NCAA did what they did for 15 years, kicking the can to the curb, and lost that lawsuit. Okay? And who's paying for the lawsuit? Who's paying for it? Television is. Okay? And it's not just the revenues coming from the playoff. It's the revenues that come from Fox, the Big Ten, the Big 12. It's from what ESPN is paying to the SEC, the ACC, the Big 12. It's an endless supply of we need more. Okay, so if you need more, then you got to be thinking outside the box even more about what's best for the game. And that's why I think some of these massive changes, you watch when this championship game concludes, you'll see all the writers now, all of them, all the guys that you follow, whether it's Staples or Ross Dellinger, name that, but Hamill, all the guys that you follow, Bruce Feldman, everybody is going to be writing about, okay, where do we go from here? Okay, well, where do we go from here is this. You got to have more games because the only way you're going to be able to drain the well of the networks that are invested in college football is by giving them more inventory. And more inventory, first and foremost, starts with 4 more teams and 2 more games that they can sell and make money with. And you don't have to stretch it out another week to add the 4 teams that you're giving buys to. You just make them play. And those teams get to play at home. What's wrong with that? My God, it's a cash cow. And you're letting it go. You gotta take advantage of every imaginable opportunity you've got to make more money. And it starts with expanding to 16. Now, should it end there? Absolutely. It's got to end there. We don't need more than 16. And by the way, the conference championships are not going away. All right? So anybody thinking the conference championships play no part, hell yeah, they do. Mm-hmm. And those games in November that were being played involving teams like BYU and Iowa State Name all those teams that were threatening to get in. Those games were meaningful, and those games got big-time ratings, even involving schools that don't necessarily rate all that well. Miami mattered. South Carolina mattered. Ole Miss mattered. All those teams that didn't get in but were playing games that mattered, those were huge for the regular season. And that's all brought about by the expansion. So everything about what's transpired is really good. But the bad part comes because we don't know how to promote it. We don't know how to put the calendar together. And we've got, on some occasions, the very people that should care the most about the product, torpedoing the product publicly by saying these games aren't any good. So how the hell do you do that? Why should a college football game in the playoffs, every time it's played when it's not a competitive game, be a referendum on the state of the sport? Did we say that when the Dolphins beat the living hell out of when the Vikings got their butts kicked by the Dolphins, or when the Broncos got their butts kicked by Spencer Tillman's 49ers in 1990? No, we never said that. If there's a 4-game sweep in the World Series, hey, it's a 4-game sweep. It happens. But in college football, one bad game at any level, and it's like, oh, my God.
Yep.
This is just horrible. This is terrible. And it's the very people that are invested in it that are telling us publicly how bad it is. We got to stop doing that. At some point, the people that love the game need to start talking about the game in a positive light when the game isn't that good. Find something else to talk about other than you're pissed off because you didn't get the brand name that you wanted in the opening round.
Yeah, love the game. No matter what conference you're in, no matter who's in the game, love the game of college football, which we all do. Tim, last thing, I know you got in New Jersey. Is there a favorite place you go tonight for dinner? Is there a place you've been to these places 100 times?
I have a place in Jersey, but I'm not going to it tonight because I have a Zoom. Shaheen Holloway likes to do Zooms the night before the game. They're having a hockey game at the arena. This is another thing you face in the Big East. There's a hockey game at the Prudential Center tomorrow afternoon. So we can't go to a shoot-around and meet with the coaches. So Shaheen wants to do LaFonso Ellis and I are calling the game. So we're doing a Zoom call with Shaheen at about 8 o'clock tonight. So it'll be room service tonight. But tomorrow there is a great Italian restaurant just on the outskirts of in Short Hills, New Jersey, not in Newark per se. There's a great Italian spot that I go to that is just fantastic. So, and by the way, cannoli bars for Italians that are really good are special. And I get those when I go to Providence on Federal Way. I get, when I go to New York, there's some special pubs that, are home-owned, guys that have owned the buildings for years. That's one of the great things about being on the East Coast when you do a game. So that's a great question. I wish I could tonight, but it is going to be room service. But it's a good hotel, and I'll just watch a little ball and get ready for tomorrow.
Tim, great to have you on. We'll have fun watching the game Monday night. Thank you so much, buddy. Keep doing what you do. Thanks for the time you spend with us.
You got it. Notre Dame loses, but they cover.
Oh, there you go.
Lose, but they cover.
I think you sounded like his good friend, the former analyst. Yeah, Bino. Tim Brando, Fox Sports, with us on 365 Sports.